Hi, I'm Adam Kreek, an executive business coach here with the delicious and nutritious Dov Baron. In this episode, you're going to learn about three things. One, what you're missing about values and the conversation around values and how that can make you a better executive and leader. Two, we're going to rip the colloquial phrasing around failure and actually get to the meat and the core of what failure truly means and how we can move past it. And three, you'll learn a little bit more about me. How about a kid who got bullied at school, who's the child of an immigrant born in a refugee camp, made it all the way through an athletic journey to Olympic gold, and now is in the world of executive coaching and business consulting.
Welcome back to our delicious conversation with two-time Olympian Adam Kreek. He holds 60 international medals, including gold, and he is an author of a book called The Responsibility Ethic, best-selling book. He teaches leaders around the world from different organizations. He's one of the top leading business coaches. It's not really what he does, it's beyond coaching. He specializes in leadership development and strategic planning. He has all kinds of great background. He's worked with companies like Microsoft and Mercedes-Benz, General Electric, Shell, all kinds of great companies, and he's bringing them this responsibility ethic. And we were talking about in the first part about this the way terms are thrown around, like lean into failure or being more integral. And a lot of these things are things that are just thrown away. They don't really mean much, or they don't have enough gravity at a subjective level. And a lot of times people are reading the book, saying the words, but there's no depth to it. And Adam and I have been talking about this in our previous conversation. In part one of the show, we talked about it in a conversation off air. About how this need to go deeper within ourselves and find out what matters to us. And this is what Adam was talking a lot about in the first part, is that the only thing that's going to get you through the failure and have a happy success and happy failure is knowing what your values are, knowing what your meaning is. And so I want to sort of step into that take a little bit deeper look into that understanding of the way Adam looks at failure that's different than most others. He did a TEDx presentation, and it was called I Seek Failure. Now, we talked about in part one, I don't know too many people who are happy about failure. It kind of sucks. But he talked about the power of non-attainment and these failure stepping stones that he's built. So walk us through a little bit about that, because by the way, I loved your presentation in the TEDx. It was fabulous. You were engaged. It was not some regurgitated nonsense. You could tell it was your real story. So talk to us about those stepping stones that are the power of non-attainment, rather.
Non-attainment. Well, the stepping stones that help you, embrace non-attainment. And I think, these are this is the reason as we learn about how to be okay with non-attainment is why this conversation is not only delicious, but will also be nutritious.
Delicious and nutritious. like a bad TV dinner ad from the 50s.
Yes.
It's delicious and nutritious.
So, when we talk about the stepping stones to, and I suppose it's letting go of failure, to let go of failure.
Yeah.
And that's truly how we grow through a failure experience. And I've worked with a number of executives through some very difficult failures in their careers. And the response, and there was one that's standing out in my mind particularly, and he said, I've seen the aphorisms. I've heard the Michael Jordan, quote, I missed blah, blah, blah. That's why I succeeded. Or failure is necessary for success. And those aphorisms seemed right and they seemed okay when I was going through small failures. But now that I'm truly going through a real failure where, I'm losing my house, I'm close to losing my family, I've lost my job, I have to rebuild my career, like a real devastating failure.
There's a distinction between failure and devastation. And failure is, this project didn't work out. Devastation is my entire identity has just been destroyed by whatever means, even if at an ego level.
Yeah, exactly. So an ego destruction, and that's the level of failure I'm talking about.
Right.
Not just, oh, I didn't meet the sales target. Oh no, I had this, I didn't get the house that I wanted to get, or whatever sort of goals you set out for yourself, but something that truly rocks you to your core. That style of failure, and that style of failure can really unearth you. It can destroy your confidence. And again, what this executive said is, I just wanted to punch those sayings, because I'd read them and I'd say, you don't understand. You don't understand me. And you have this feeling that you are the only person who has ever gone through this before, and you're the only one who's ever had your ego ripped out from you, your identity destroyed, your future in shambles, and being unsure of what's going to happen next. Yet you're not a special snowflake. Sorry. And there's different strategies you can use to go through to let go of the baggage of failure, because there's a lot of regret. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of shame that comes along with a real failure. I'll say, these devastational failures. And the process that I've found, this came through with from the learning of my first Olympic experience, and then has certainly played true in business and family life. Failures of relationship that have been devastational, or failures of business that have felt like I couldn't move past. And certainly, my clients have benefited from this. And the process is relatively simple. It's reflect, learn, grow, let it go. And the first step is actually the hardest step, which is the reflection step. And this is the part where you need to take the time to have personal exploration. And my strong recommendation is to do this in nature with some, or in tandem with some kind of physical expression or physical activity. So whether it be walking or cycling. I knew one woman, she did this in the racquetball court. She'd go to a racquetball court and she'd spend 30 minutes a day reflecting on the feelings of failure, the feelings of shame, the feelings of regret. And she'd hit the racquetball and just go, "Bah!" Right? Really loud, and scream. She'd just scream as hard as she could every time she hit it. And she did that, a couple times a week for a few weeks, until finally she didn't feel that rage, that. And if you're going through failure, and you're living through, that feeling of regret, of rage, of devastation, of frustration. And it just allows you to primordially express that feeling.
And I want to just step in there for a moment, because I want people to grasp this, because again, we live in this society that frowns upon expressions of anger. Anger is not a bad thing. Anger is a good thing. It is a powerful thing. You can use it very well. You can use it, of course, destructively, but it can be used very well to empower you. And when you go through a failure, there is regret, there is anger, there is rage. And that stuff gets stuck in your body and fogs the mind if you don't get it out. It's one of the things I explain to my clients is like, let's get you in front of a punching bag. Let's get you a baseball bat and beat the crap out of the pillows, whatever it is, and verbalize, you asshole, the partner who ripped you off, or whatever it is that you feel. And you can even have that with yourself, but get it out. This is vitally important. So I love that you've combined the physicality with the reflection, because people think the reflection is, I'm going to journal, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to go, Om. That's very nice. You should probably do that. But along with Om, what about a couple of big F-bombs and a couple of beat the crap out of something, just because you need that. It moves the energy through you. As you said right at the beginning, we are physical beings. Energy gets stuck within us. We need to move that beyond us. So thank you for that. It's really important.
Yeah, and I love how you describe it, and it brings back to the first part of our conversation of David Goggins, and I think that's what he did so well.
Absolutely.
And something very meditative and powerful with long distance aerobic activity, and so I've seen it myself, through rowing, cycling, running. Seen it in many of my clients as well. That there is something medicinal in the repeated drudgery of a long distance aerobic effort, and a lot, and I've experienced it, and I know clients have experienced it, tears, rage, the range of emotions, and especially if you're like running through the woods or rowing along the coast where there's nobody around, when they come up, you can process them all. And the beauty of being physically exhausted while you process them is that you don't have the energy to resist the uprising. And so often we are resisting the uprising, and we are conditioned in our society, like you say, Dov, to not express our anger and not express these extreme emotions for right reason, because it can be very destructive, and it has been destructive in the past when we've let people behave that way with abandon. But we need to find effective ways to express that part of our condition. Otherwise, it will become toxic. It will become lodged in our body and our physical. And I also want to reinforce that it is important to journal. It is important to talk with those who are close to you, and it is important to reflect in all the different ways that you can. Compose music, compose poetry, find a way to art therapy. All of these ways that aren't necessarily the way that we're trained to focus linearly or perform rationally within our responsibilities as leaders, within our responsibilities as corporate leaders, as leaders of people, as leaders of strategy. Yet this part of our being remains, and it needs to be served. Otherwise, it will turn out to become poison. And the end result of the reflection phase, when we talk about reflect, learn, grow, let it go, is for us to, one, release the baggage, but two, separate the facts of the experience from the feelings of the experience.
Right.
And so often we conflate the facts and the feelings. Just because you feel something does not mean that it's true. And just because something happened does not mean you will feel anything in response. And there's nothing wrong with not having a feeling with regards to a fact that might affect other people emotionally. And there's nothing wrong with having an emotion that's non-factual and non-logical. But we need to make sure that they are separated and expressed and acknowledged before we can truly move on to the next step, which is the easiest step, which is the step that we often rush to before we go through the reflection phase. So if you're feeling it in your body, right? If you feel the failure in your body, you're feeling physically weak, you're feeling limited, you may be feeling depressed, or maybe you're feeling angry or resisted or exhausted or burnt out, or you're having one of these reactions to the failure. You need to go back to the reflect phase spot. But when you feel like you've processed, this is where you learn from it. You say, when I've had this failure, this is what I can learn. And you start writing down the notes of, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could have changed this, I could have talked to this person in this way, I could have approached this in this way. And this was the uncontrollable part of my failure. This is the controllable part of my failure. And sometimes through the learning point, you recognize that I couldn't have avoided this failure. The controllable part, let's go back to values. This is the responsibility ethic. If you have a firm grasp on your values and you're living your values through the failure, you probably won't be going through this level of ego destruction, because you would have failed at a level that feels honorable and respectful and less devastational. And you can have and you can move past that reflection stage a lot quicker, right? The values piece avoids the need to go into the depths of hell to come on to the other side of the learning. And then the learning is what you need to change, and the growth side is simply applying. And one of the best ways,
implementation of the learning,
the meditation of the learning, and one of the best ways is simply to teach it to other people. And this is why I find when I do corporate trainings and such, the most effective ones are the ones where I train senior leaders, who then train the middle managers, who then train the frontline workers. And that, not only taking the information on board, but having to teach it to other people puts it down. So if you've learned that you need to be more, upfront and assertive in your communication, or you've learned that you need to be, take that time to listen and give other people the space, or whatever you've learned through that failure, you're then applying it, teaching it to others. And then once we've gone through those stages of processing that emotional, physical, spiritual side through the reflection, we've learned it, the mental side, okay, this is what I need to change, we've grown, we've expressed it, we are now embodying the change, we've taught it to others, then it's gone, right? We've let it go.
And I want to be clear with people, because I think that we live in this deeply ingrained world of instant gratification. And I want to be really clear with everybody. So let's not lead anybody down the garden path. The process Adam just walked you through is not something you will do today, or in the next 10 minutes, or even in the next week. This is a process. It's going to take as long as it takes. And there is a way to speed it. I will tell you, because I do this with my clients. There's a way to speed it. Fully immerse. That's the way to speed it. And the more you avoid it, the longer it will take. And by the way, and I'm going to tell you this in case you want to know, because this is my work, this is my specialty. I want you to understand, if you're exhausted in the process, the exhaustion is your resistance to the process. You're not exhausted by the process, you're exhausted by your resistance to the process. And your resistance to the process is what is slowing it down. Because when is it going to be over? When are we going to be there? Well, get in the back of the car and shush. Just do the work, because it's going to be over when you stop resisting. If you want it to go faster, go deeper. If you want it to go faster, go deeper. I say this to all my clients all the time. Tattoo this on your brain. If you want it to go faster, go deeper. What's slowing it down is your resistance. Your head's saying yes. That's your cognitive. But at your limbic, you're feeling threatened by this, and that's the resistance. Now what you've got to do is surrender, not to me, but to the process. I don't care if you surrender to me, surrender to the process. What Adam's laying out for you here is fundamental to your development of meaning and values in your life. And it is vitally important for you to do if you are going to lead from a place of service. If you don't want to lead from a place of service, you want to lead from a place of ego, then you've already listened to too much of this show. Turn it off. It's not for you. That's okay. Move on, right? There's all kinds of people out there showing you pictures of girls on planes with push-up bras and Ferraris and all that nonsense. That's what they want. That's great. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about mature leadership, which has got nothing to do with age. It's got to do with emotional maturity. That's what we're talking about here. Now, before we move on, I really want to get to this, because we look at people and we see them, here's this guy, Adam Kreek. Oh my God, he is coaching executives. He's working with teams like from Mercedes-Benz and, these other fantastic companies, and he's speaking on world stages, and and he's an Olympian who's got gold, and he's won medals, and is in the Hall of Fame, and he's even rowed across the Atlantic. They've made documentaries about him. He capsized in the Bermuda Triangle. Wow, what a life story! Yeah, that's not kind of how it goes, really, but that's nice. I get that. That's the cliff notes. I get it. They've got them about me too, but that's not the story, and the story is often very twisted and turned. So obviously, you said you're an adventurous type, but why rowing? Because in many ways, rowing could seem, I put that in brackets, pretty boring. What are you doing? I'm doing this.
Over and over and over again.
How often are you doing that? Oh, all the time. How many hours a day? 4 hours a day. Oh, you got a job too? Oh yeah, I got a job too. Or I go to school too. But I'm doing 4 hours a day. What? And I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do that. Isn't it boring? Right, so help us to understand how you came into that world and how it led you to where you are.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a pretty average town in Canada. I had 2 older sisters, an older brother. My mom was a nurse, an IV nurse, who then retired to raise us kids. My dad was a refugee. He was born in a refugee camp in Sweden, fleeing Estonia.
Wow.
Cut his teeth selling Fuller brushes, moved into life insurance, and had the challenges of a refugee and an immigrant. And I think he really did an admirable job, adjusting to Canada and the new life. And I was born into that family, first generation Canadian. Mom was a small little farm girl, small town. Moved into the big city of London, Ontario, which was, had maybe a couple 100,000 people. That was the family I was born into. And my parents' desire was always to be the middle class. Mm-hmm. And so moving from a lower class into a middle class to this, we want to be in the middle class. We want to raise our family in the middle class. And so I grew up in a family of parents working their butts off to just be average. And that was really, truly, because that was their aspiration, that became my aspiration.
Of course.
As a child growing up. I want to be average. I want to fit in. I want to be that kid. And I was a kid that was bullied. I was pushed around. I didn't quite have the social cues that other people who are second, third, fourth generation Canadians would have. I was just doing my best to fit into the rest of the environment.
What was odd about you that was getting you bullied?
I was outspoken, but in a way that was a little more, I guess I define it as playful, but also mischievous. I wouldn't be as observant as to the needs and wants of others. So I would, and I'll give you an example of I moved to a new school in grade 4 because I kept on getting into trouble in grade 3, and the big thing in grade 3, I stole a kid's shoes and I threw them on the roof just for fun. And I don't know why I did that. I was lighting fires in the schoolyard. I don't know why I did that. And the grade 4 moved into this new school, and the kids were and I don't even remember what I did. I was trying to play a game with them, and they didn't want me to play. So I was like, you should let me play this game. And they're like, no, we're not going to let you play the ball game. And they started jumping up and down and screaming like, we hate Adam Kreek. We hate Adam Kreek. Adam Kreek, Adam Kreek.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I just lost it and was unable to control, my temper, and picked up a stick and started chasing them around and trying to hit them. And that was a lot of my experience. And so I don't know.
So there was this massive amount of energy and also a lack of social cues, wanting to be included, but also this state of wanting to lead.
Mhm.
So I want to be included, but I want to lead. And I've got so much energy that combined with that, and then that, as you talked about, that conditioning around being average feels like a repression. That's a bottle that's going to blow.
Yeah, and it blew up, and it was really hard for me to, and you know, to understand. And then, as I matured into, middle school age, I was able to observe, and some axon and neuron connected in my brain in the sitting, and I started to stay in the background and observe what other people were doing, and figure out how to be non-confrontational. And then when I moved to high school, I moved from a very small school to a very large school. And under the advice of my mother and my siblings, get involved, get involved in sports, get involved in band, anything that piques your interest at any level, just try it. And so that was truly what I did throughout my high school time. And, from playing the tuba and the trumpet to being a mathlete and going to the science Olympics,
Really?
to playing basketball, throwing the shot put, discus, playing football, American football, Canadian football. A parent started the sport of rowing, and it was something that appealed to me. I had tried before at a camp, and I'd gone into the wilderness with my father and brother in a canoe, and I thought, this looks interesting. Then after rowing for about 6 to 8 months, one of my coaches took my father aside, and then he later took me aside, and he looked at me and he said, Adam, you're an Olympian. You just don't know it yet. And so,
What was that like, hearing somebody say that to you? I mean, because you've been this outsider kid, you're kind of on the outside, Adam Kreek, and then suddenly somebody saying to you, "You're an Olympian, dude. You just don't know it yet." What was that like? Did it register?
it registered at some level because I became that Olympian. I became an Olympic gold
But I mean, at
medalist.
that moment,
But in the moment, it was baffling. It was, I couldn't understand it.
no.
And it was a seed that was planted. And when you first see a seed that's planted, it looks like nothing has happened. And for me, it was just, what do you mean? I've never met anyone in the Olympics. Two, it's never been my dream or my thought, and it took a long time for it to actually become my own dream and be something that I wanted to do and be. I wasn't one of those kids who, I've met a number of them who, from a very early age, they wanted to be a professional athlete or an Olympian.
Sure.
That wasn't certainly my driver. My driver, I wanted to be an accountant that biked to work. That was that was my dream.
Okay.
Yeah, which is, yeah, to each their own. But it ended up germinating into a weight of potential. And that weight of potential was motivating. And because I knew I had this potential that could be expressed and was reinforced, and whenever I gave effort to the sport, and rowing is a very special sport and a unique sport in that the more you give to it, the more it gives back, probably in greater magnitude than many other sports. Uh, Simply because of the sheer physicality, and also because of the meditative nature. It requires you to be very focused and understand the fine tunes of emotion. So it really, it really gets you in touch with your spirit and your soul, as well as just the motion itself. And truly, what attracted to me, from the start, was having that ability to find presence in motion. And I think that's what kept me there. But what kept me going was, again, the poking, prodding, and the opportunities laid out to me by various coaches and mentors, and seeing seeing the improvement. The more I gave to it, the more it gave back, the more improvement. And I thought that there's, here's a potential that has not yet been realized. And I want to realize the full potential in this discipline. And that was my journey and my motivation through, qualifying for the national team, to winning world championships, to failing at the Olympics, to thinking that I was going to be done, having my energy rekindled when I taught the sport of rowing to a bunch of young athletes at Stanford University, and then going back to the Olympics and eventually winning Olympic gold. And trying to figure out and understand that potential of self, that potential with team, to understand what stops me, what motivates me, that inner journey was the motivation as well as the opportunity. Had I not had such incredible coaches, such incredible teammates, an incredible sports federation, and an environment set up around me, I could have never done this on my own. And I was really a part of a system, and grateful to have that system either found me, or I found it, or we found each other, and have had that experience, which has certainly gifted me a lot, lifetime joy and passion for sure.
Nobody makes it alone. And it's recognizing that we all have, if we'll pay attention to it, well, I can't say all, but most of us have, to a great degree, a community who will support us if we will own that willingness to step in. Potential for me is like, it's like one of those other words. Like, who cares? I don't care. But ownership of that potential, that's vastly different, because as you said, there is a responsibility ethic there. There is, there's a commitment to say, okay, if this is mine, then I got to own this, and it's on me. Adam, this has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you so much for all that you've shared. We are out of time, and I want to make sure that people, again, can find out more about you, about your book, about where they can get in touch with you, and about your speaking and your coaching and consulting. Please tell people where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you have.
Well, I'm most active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I have a few YouTube videos that talk about the leadership concept from my book, The Responsibility Ethic. So you can also find some of my teachings on that platform. You can also go to valuesdrivenleadership.com, Values Driven Leadership, where you can learn more about my professional offerings. Look forward to meeting you, and please reach out if you're interested in learning more or exploring any ideas or opportunities you might have.
Well, again, Adam, it's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you, sir. We've really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope for you, dear listener, that you will not just listen, but actually go back, listen again, take some notes. There's a lot in this one. There's a lot of really good, juicy, some real deep meat deliciousness to dig your teeth into. As Adam said, it's not just delicious, but it's nutritious. And on top of all of that, of course, we will make sure that in the show notes for the show, that all of the notes are there. All the places that you can connect with Adam, we'll make sure that all of those are in the show notes as well for you. Till next time, you can join in this conversation. You can find our LinkedIn or Facebook groups. Just look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. And remember that it doesn't matter how successful you are. If your employees and your customers don't understand what gives your company meaning, you're only working at a fraction of your true capability. To find out how you can hire me, Dov Baron, as a speaker or leadership strategist for yourself or your organization, go to dovbaron.com. That's DOVBARON.com. Because unified actualized meaning is the one single monolithic difference between mediocrity and greatness for all individuals and for companies. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friends. Stay curious about your values. Not the values that you tell yourself that are on the surface, but the values that come at the peaks and in the depths of the valley. That is where you'll find out what truly matters, so that you can be happy in your failure and joyous in your success. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deepest meaning to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership of impact. And I am out.